sir.
And then I think it was Robert who told me that the athletic director was black. I said, "Are you kidding me?" I said, "Are you kidding me?" I said, "Wow." It's like, do you know how that makes me feel? It makes me feel like the work was not in vain.
It wasn't.
Wow.
It wasn't. It wasn't. I tell you, the struggles, and I tell you, that is what is so admirable for me, is just to, again, just stay in the course of the resiliency and the toughness. I mean, and just what you said, putting the first black graduate from Mississippi State University, that people knew that you had gone through. Hell doesn't, it's not an appropriate word.
No,
it is not even adequate enough to express, to describe what you went through.
It was like one of the things, besides the kids doing ugly things to us, but one of the things, and this only happened once, but it happened. And the reason I didn't talk about it too much because I was an economics major. The teacher who was teaching me French was married to the guy who was a doctoral student of economics, so I knew not to complain, all right? But she had 3 rows of kids.
3 rows.
3 rows.
Okay.
She moved everybody over to 2 rows and left me right there.
By yourself.
That's it. Isolated that.
Really?
Oh yeah. But I could never say anything about it. Okay. But to be able to take that kind of stuff,
You have to take it.
you have to take it. You have to take it. Now, on the positive side, so I give people that are just you. I took a lot of economic courses while at State. I took a labor economic course, a doctor, PhD, okay, old guy, old skinny guy. They refused the companies that was recruiting refused to interview me. When I came in to sit at the table, they would get up and walk away. So my professor, when I was getting ready to graduate, said to me, "Barnes," he was walking across the campus, "What are you going to do?" And I said, "They refused to interview me, so I don't have an option." He said, and this is how I got to New York the first time. He said, "Where do you want to go?" I said, he said, "That was serious." I had no idea. He said, "New York, Chicago, LA, or anywhere in between. You tell me where you want to go." And I said, "But I didn't know." I said, "New York." That's how it happened. In less than a week, I had the ticket. And I
Less than a week?
In less than a week, I had a ticket in my hand, flying to New York for a job that I never had to interview for.
Wow. So he made a phone call.
He made a phone call. A phone call, just like that.
Just like that.
Just like that. So he had juice somewhere, and the company was Western Electric Corporation, because they used to be the manufacturing arm for AT&T before AT&T split up. So he had a lot of juice, and just so while I was knocking this one who did offer things to, then I praise him because he set me on the way. Okay, and so so I can tell you all kinds of stuff, but that's how it happened. and just I'm pleased. And the thing that makes me really happy, I'm serious, to see you and the athletic kind. You see Amber and Robert. And I was telling Robert the other day, Robert, I said, boy, I couldn't be appreciative enough. I said for what you're doing. I said that is fantastic for you to be able to swing, have the influence, and that's what it's all about, having the power.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And I'm not going to get into all the politics, but that's what these folks pay for access, pay for to have the influence on people in key places. That's why your presence is monumental. You can't possibly say enough about what it means for us as a people, for you to be where you are. And just don't forget, you know, little kids are looking out.
Yes, sir.
When they see you, they say, I want to be like that. The reason I studied economics, there was a guy by the name of Andrew Brummer. I read about him. He was a black economist from the South. He was on the Federal Reserve Board. I said, I want to be like Andrew. I'm serious. Role models. I knew nothing about economics except, and the impact that you will have, you may not ever know it. Andrew never knew me, never knew that I was studying economics because of him. You're going to have the same impact. I'm sure you're still, right now, you're having the same impact. And they say, I want to be like him.
Thank you for that. You know, there was a group, and I think it's Cleveland. Is it Cleveland High School that's down in the Delta? It's not.
Yeah, Cleveland High School. Yep.
Yeah, it's not East Side, and they're not split in. One of those is one school. So they were coming up, and so they have a law and public safety class that they teach in high school. My son took it here at Starkville High School when he was in high school. But the Cleveland High School, they came, so they come to campus, and their teacher was an African American guy. This dude, most of the black students, there were maybe 2 white students, but most majority of the students, I think it was probably a class of, it was probably 15 or 16 of them, maybe 2 of them were white. So it was an integrated school, but he came as a black teacher. And so he wanted to come and tour the police department. And so I had just got appointed to my position. And so he came in the lobby, he didn't have an appointment, he didn't have anything scheduled. So I said, yeah, one of the lieutenants, this black guy, he called me and said, man, do you think we can allow me to say, get the crime prevention coordinator? She's a black girl, black lady. And so she said, yeah. And so they were talking to him down in the lobby. And he said, I want you to be my chief. And he said, okay. And so they started touring the building. And so I was up in my office. And so they were coming to the building. So they came up the stairs by my office. And so they were talking to the business manager sitting outside my office. And so I was working on my computer. I was doing something. And so I hear him out there. And so I stand up. I didn't go meet him. I just stood up. So when they came to the door, I was already standing. And so the teacher came in first. And the ones I never forget the look on his face. When he walked through the door, he walked through, and he was going to extend his hand. I shocked him. So he was in shock. He didn't know what to do. He looked, and he just had this look on his face at first, like, yeah, and I reached my hand, I said, man, how you doing? And so he finally got over, he shook it, he just broke into a big smile, and he said, y'all come on in. And he looked at me
That's
like
impact.
I wasn't real.
That's impact.
He looked at me like I wasn't real.
Oh.
He didn't. So I was coming, I said, y'all come on, and we talked, and you know, and I told him my office and told him a little bit about, you know, my experiences, you know, how long I've been doing this, so we were doing this, so. And before they got ready to leave, and I told him about my son, and I told him, I said, listen, you have an open invitation anytime. So he's been twice. He hadn't been this year, but he came 2 years in a row to bring his students to the police department. And he told me just what you told me. He said, man, you don't know what it means. He said, I'm gonna be honest with you. He said, I wasn't expecting you. He said, I wasn't expecting. And he even asked after he met me, and he came to my office, he even asked me, he said, you for real, you the chief? And he said, yes. He said, I'm telling you. He said, that's why I wanted you to meet him, because he's the chief. He said, I wanted you to know. He said, man, he said, I never would have thought that I would be walking to the office of a black guy.
Yes.
So
That's what
right.
it means for
Yes, sir.
us.
You're right.
It gives us racial pride. It makes us happy as hell when our people do well,
Yes, sir.
succeed.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Do you know how many people you influence? And do you know how many other folks, just like this guy, other folks, if you were to go, I'm not suggesting that you do it, but if you were to go campaign and tell everybody like him that you're here, people will be so happy, just happy, because they can't believe it.
That's it.
They can't believe it.
Yeah.
It's like, wow. Folks are happy when our people are doing well. They are just as simple.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes,
So
sir.
I say kudos to you, man.
Yes, sir. Same to you. Same to you.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, big kudos to you. Thank you for sure. Thank you. Absolutely. Thank you, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you. I tell you, I know. I just can only imagine it. You know, we talk about the struggles, and I just think about my struggles and some of the things that have happened to me in my ascension, to my position, and some of those things were necessary.
Yeah.
I'll say they were necessary for me to be who I am, and then to keep the perspective that I have. I tell you, it had been just the grace of God. I tell you, the grace of God, and I humbly, accept this position. And my wife has always reminded me. She says, you really have to be mindful of, the things that you do, the things that you say, because so many people are watching you. And said people are watching you, you don't even think they're watching you. She said your dress, your mannerisms.
Everything.
She said
Everything.
we go places.
Everything.
She said,
Everything.
this is her right here.
Everything.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. They're not just different, they're light years apart. Okay? When we thought about going to a football game, my roommate and I, his name was Ernest Parson, we thought better. We said we shouldn't do that because we would just expose ourselves, because they were already acting up and we didn't give them a chance to act further.
So I was watching the other night, and I caught it late, and I think I recorded it. It was 30 for 30 on the football team of Ole Miss. And it was the year, I think, they won the national championship when James Meredith was just a freshman, or he was just being enrolled in school, and he wasn't allowed to go to football games. He wasn't allowed to go to football games. And of course, I think the majority of the conference games I know were down at the vet in Jackson.
Yeah.
How many? Do you remember how many home games there were actually over here?
No.
Yeah. Okay. Because I know there were no lights over there, and then there weren't big games.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if Brother Afro can remember when he first came, but I grew up in Starkville. Starkville was home for him.
Oh, really?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So I can remember that all of the conference games, or even all of the football games that happened on campus, always started at 1:30.
Okay.
That was because there were no lights.
Yeah.
And then of course, they wanted to get the games over before dark.
Yeah,
Before
yeah.
dark came. So,
Yeah.
oh my word.
Wow.
Oh my words, man. I can sit and talk to you all day.
I'm
Oh,
telling
yes,
you,
sir.
just to
Yes,
think about
sir.
it.
Absolutely.
How far we have come, it's just thrilling to say the least. Wow.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
It is. It is a pleasure to meet you.
So
It
you
really is.
Yeah, bro was just telling me, he said, I got somebody I want you to meet, okay? And he said, and he's the police chief. I said, he's the black guy. He said, yes, he's just like you. I said, wow. Wow, man.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It is, man. It is. It is.
And I said to Robert, the colonel, and Ambrose, I said, do you think I would have stand here 57 years ago? They wouldn't even allow me to sniff come anywhere close to.
Well, no doubt, no doubt, no doubt. And don't can the culture either.
Yeah.
Don't know can the culture. I heard my grandfather worked out here as a custodian, and he would tell me stories. He would tell. There was other people that I knew in the community that I grew up in that they were telling me, you know, and I just reflect on that. Because here I am, when I was working, I would be able to hear stories from my grandfathers and some of these men that worked out here that they were custodians and they did all that work, but they couldn't be called after dark on campus.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
couldn't be called after campus.
You know, I was, the one thing that I always said was, boy, that I always said to me, there is a God in
Yes, sir.
Gilead, because there was no way I was supposed to survive given all this stuff that was tossed my way. And it's like, wow. And then here's the other thing. When Ernest Parser went home on the weekend, he didn't go every week, but whenever we went, do you know, I was taken care of. I mean, like,
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
Yes, sir.
yes, indeed. I said, wow. So, when I left Mississippi State, I always put on my resume that I was the first black guy to graduate from Mississippi State University. Do you know how much that helped in my employment? Absolutely, because they made a few assumptions. And one guy told me, a corporate officer at General Motors told me, we assume that you're smart. We assume that you will be able to deal with, here's what his words were. A lot of people out there was a group of primarily white men. He said, we assume that you would know how to deal with that and you won't become frustrated. Okay, so the assumption is because they assume that you're not going to be fighting back and going into you swearing on it. You will be mild-mannered because you have gone through hell.
Right.
So we make those assumptions that you can handle it.
Wow.
And he was correct, because not everybody accepted it. It's just like these folks back then. They were, back then we were integrated in the schools. In the corporate world, we were integrated in the corporate world, and it didn't go well.
You know, it's just these stories and these experiences. You know, when we read about them and we hear about them, you know, but to actually sit and to get it firsthand,
Yeah.
you know, there is, you know, it is much more impactful. I know for me, and I have an affinity for history,
Yeah.
and to understand that I'm where I am, and the things where God has blessed me. God has been good to me.
Yeah.
And so God has
Clear.
been good to me, no doubt. He's been good to me, no doubt. I tell you,
Clear.
he's helped me, no doubt. And but for the persons that yourself that came before us and had the courage and the intestinal fortitude and the patience and the resilience to go through what you all did, to understand what it was that you were here for, and to stay that course, because there were so many more that were left to come after you. I mean, it is just, I'm telling you, it does me, oh my goodness, to hear, and I know there are so many more things that you can share and that you have to share, and I'm really interested to hear some other things that you'll share tomorrow. But I'm telling you, I'm honored to be in your presence and be in your company. I really am.
Well,
I really am. I'm telling you, thank you. I just say thank you.
I feel the same about you as well. For you to be where you are.
And I've gotten that a number of times. I've gotten that a number of times. I have.
Yes, sir. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Man, it's crazy. It's crazy.
Make me proud.
Man.
Keep it up. Keep
Yes,
it up.
sir. No doubt. No doubt we got you. Just want to, do like you did. And it wasn't planned for you. You had no intentions on the outcome being the way that it is in such a magnitude or level. And we just get up every day and we try to strive to be better. And we got people like you to look forward to inspire us and continue to motivate us to do what we need. So man, I mean, this fight is not gonna win. So we're not gonna be tired.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
That's the thing.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. No, we can't give up.
No, sir.
Can't quit.
No, not quit. Give out before
We
you
can't
give
quit.
up.
Oh yeah.
Yes, sir.
So you're working on your master's degree, sir?
That's correct. Yes, sir. I begin my master's degree in public relations.
Fantastic.
Yes, sir.
Fantastic.
I'm behind you, man. I'm behind you. And listen, if you don't get to walk a little fast, I'm gonna step on the back of your heels. Hurry up. All right. Yeah.
Come to us and tried to make sure that he could do everything he could for us. And he would say, I've had this professor. You don't want him, you want him. Okay, and one of those, he was steering us in the right direction to make sure that we had the best experience that we could have. So my kudos to him, and I understand you. If you would do one thing, if he remembers, I'm sure he will, just tell him that I came by the university. And I am ecstatic to see what I see.
And it's just the beginning. That's just the beginning.
Point of clarity, we're not related.
We're not really.
You think I was related for a moment, I did.
We'll tell a story. But no, we're not related. It's just, private nature.
Yeah.
But I always say it's all connected.
I was gonna make that point too. Kind of mentioned Robert, got you connected, Ambro,
Yeah.
Rashida, me.
Yeah. Yeah.
The students, that's what we always want you to see. Your resources always around you. So don't ever be afraid to stop and ask. That's why I was asking what your major was, because I'm going out getting scholarship support and stuff, so I want to help where we can, and the more I know about you, the better. And please ask us anytime.
You probably have no idea how Sarah was, I think, excellent ambassador. Where she goes out and talking to people, and she was in New York City, but she had to make sure she took time to come see me. We had lunch together. But when you have somebody like that, spread the good news.
All right, spread it.
what you get from that, and at some point I was like, but every time I was looking for a new job, I always mentioned Mississippi State. Okay. Because that was for me. As far as I was concerned, it shaped me in a lot of ways. Shaped me. I don't like to talk about the negative, so I forget about those, but positively it has an impact. So,
I don't know who the host is, but I'm already.
Yes. Robert, will you do the honor and blessing the final?